America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, a beacon of democracy for the world. These ideals are etched into the fabric of our nation, woven into the very tapestry of our history. But what happens when those ideals are challenged, when the foundations of our democracy begin to tremble? We find ourselves at a crossroads, a pivotal moment in American history. The very essence of our democracy, the principles that have guided us for centuries, are being called into question. From the halls of power to the streets of our cities, a sense of unease prevails. The warning signs are undeniable. Political polarization has reached a fever pitch, dividing our nation along ideological lines. Trust in our institutions has eroded, replaced by suspicion and cynicism. Disinformation campaigns run rampant, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. The ground beneath our feet feels unstable. This is not a time for complacency. This is not a time for apathy. This is a time for vigilance, a time for all Americans to confront the uncomfortable questions that have long been simmering beneath the surface. Is American democracy truly on the brink? These are not questions to be taken lightly. The echoes of history are hard to ignore. From the rise of fascism in Europe to the emergence of dictatorships around the globe, the patterns are eerily familiar. Power becomes concentrated in the hands of a select few, dissent is silenced, and individual liberties are trampled underfoot. The pillars of democracy, free and fair elections, a free press, an independent judiciary, crumble under the weight of authoritarian rule. In America today, we see glimpses of these warning signs, subtle yet unmistakable. The erosion of democratic norms, the attacks on the media, the questioning of election integrity, these are not isolated incidents. The very language of our political discourse has become infused with fear, division, and a disdain for opposing viewpoints. This is not to say that America is on the verge of succumbing to a full-blown dictatorship. Our institutions, though strained, remain resilient. The spirit of democracy, while wounded, still burns bright in the hearts of many. But the warning signs are there, and to ignore them would be a grave mistake. The specter of authoritarianism does not announce its arrival with a bang, but rather creeps in slowly, insidiously. It begins with the erosion of trust, the normalization of division, the acceptance of the unacceptable. It preys on our fears, our prejudices, our willingness to turn a blind eye to injustice.
This is not a conversation about left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. This is a conversation about the very soul of America, about the principles upon which our nation was founded. This is about the future we want to build for ourselves and for generations to come. The stakes could not be higher. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation, constant vigilance, and a willingness to defend its principles against all threats. The time for complacency is over. The time for silence is past. We must engage in honest, open, and often uncomfortable conversations about the state of our democracy. We must shine a light on the warning signs, challenge those who seek to undermine our institutions, and hold our leaders accountable. The future of American democracy hangs in the balance. The choices we make today will determine the course of our nation for decades to come. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose to defend the ideals that have made America a beacon of hope and freedom for so long. Let us choose to preserve our democracy, not just for ourselves, but for all who yearn for a more just and equitable world.
To truly grasp the gravity of the question, is America on the brink of dictatorship? We must first establish a clear understanding of what a dictatorship entails. It's not simply about a leader with strong opinions or a government that makes unpopular decisions. Dictatorship delves far deeper, striking at the very heart of a nation's soul, its mechanisms of governance, and the fundamental rights of its citizens. At its core, a dictatorship is a system of government where all power is concentrated in the hands of a single individual or a small elite group. This power is absolute, unchecked by any independent institutions or legal constraints. Imagine a society where the courts answer to the dictator, where the media is nothing more than a mouthpiece for propaganda, and where any voice of dissent is swiftly silenced. This concentration of power is often justified through various means: appeals to national unity, promises of economic prosperity, or the need for swift and decisive action. However, the underlying reality remains constant. The individual is subservient to the state, and any semblance of genuine political participation is ruthlessly suppressed. Dictatorships are not born overnight. They emerge gradually, often subtly, eroding the foundations of democratic societies from within. Understanding the hallmarks of such regimes, recognizing the early warning signs, is crucial in safeguarding against their insidious rise.
The faces of tyranny, from charisma to brutality. History is replete with dictators, each leaving their own indelible mark on the world, each demonstrating the chillingly diverse faces of tyranny. From the chilling efficiency of Hitler's Nazi Germany to the brutal oppression of Stalin's Soviet Union, the methods may differ, but the outcome remains tragically consistent: the suppression of individual liberties and the creation of a climate of fear and repression. Some dictators rise to power through brute force, seizing control through military coups and violent revolutions. Others, however, employ more insidious tactics, exploiting existing social divisions, manipulating public opinion through propaganda and misinformation, and gradually dismantling democratic institutions under the guise of progress or national security. One common thread that binds these disparate figures is their insatiable thirst for power and their utter disregard for human rights. They view themselves as above the law, answerable to no one but their own ambitions. Dissent is crushed, opposition is silenced, and the very notion of individual freedom is deemed a threat to their absolute rule. It's tempting to believe that such figures are relics of a bygone era, that the horrors of the 20th century could never be repeated. Yet as we look around the world today, we see disturbing signs of authoritarianism resurfacing, often cloaked in the language of populism, nationalism, or religious extremism.
The slippery slope: how democracies crumble. The erosion of democracy is rarely a sudden, cataclysmic event. It is a gradual process, a slow chipping away at the foundations of freedom, often so subtle that its victims barely notice the ground shifting beneath their feet. Like a frog in a pot of slowly heating water, societies can find themselves trapped in a cage of their own making, the bars forged from apathy, complacency, and a failure to recognize the warning signs. One of the first casualties in this descent is often the free press. Dictators understand that a well-informed citizenry is a threat to their power. Therefore, they seek to control the narrative, suppressing dissenting voices, discrediting legitimate news sources, and flooding the public sphere with propaganda and misinformation. As the free press withers, so too does the public's ability to hold their leaders accountable. Corruption flourishes in the darkness, unchecked by independent oversight or the scrutiny of investigative journalism. The judiciary, once a bulwark against tyranny, becomes subservient to the executive branch, dispensing justice that is neither blind nor impartial. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of this decline is that it is often perpetrated in the name of the very values it seeks to destroy. Dictators will claim to be acting in the best interests of the people, to be protecting them from some external threat or internal enemy. They will wrap themselves in the flag, invoking patriotism and national unity as justification for their oppressive actions.
Echoes of history, parallels and warnings. As we turn our attention to the current state of American democracy, it's crucial to acknowledge the haunting echoes of history that reverberate around us. The world has witnessed the rise and fall of countless regimes, each offering valuable lessons on the fragility of freedom and the seductive allure of authoritarianism. To ignore these lessons, to dismiss them as irrelevant to the American experience, would be a grave disservice to the sacrifices made by those who fought to preserve our liberties. The parallels between the early stages of totalitarian regimes and certain trends emerging in contemporary American politics are striking, if not yet absolute. The demonization of opponents, the relentless attacks on the free press, the erosion of trust in democratic institutions, these are not merely symptoms of political polarization, but rather echoes of a darker past. History teaches us that dictators rarely seize power in a single dramatic act. More often they exploit existing fissures within society, gradually chipping away at democratic norms and institutions until the very foundations of freedom crumble. They prey on fear, uncertainty, and resentment, offering simplistic solutions to complex problems and scapegoating marginalized groups to consolidate their hold on power. While America's democratic institutions remain robust, the warning signs are undeniable. The rise of hyperpartisanship, the proliferation of misinformation, and the increasing willingness to condone or excuse undemocratic behavior. These trends, if left unchecked, could pave the way for a future where the principles enshrined in our Constitution are eroded beyond recognition.
The erosion of norms, a crack in the foundation. Democracy, unlike a building or a bridge, is not a physical structure with clearly defined points of failure. It is a living, breathing entity, sustained by a complex web of norms, traditions, and unwritten rules that ensure its stability and resilience. These norms, often taken for granted, serve as the bedrock of a functioning democracy, providing the framework for peaceful transitions of power, respectful debate, and the protection of minority rights. In recent years, America has witnessed a disturbing erosion of these democratic norms, a slow but steady chipping away at the foundation that has long underpinned our republic. The peaceful transfer of power, once a hallmark of American democracy, has been challenged by baseless allegations of election fraud and efforts to overturn the will of the voters. The respect for the rule of law, another cornerstone of our system, has been undermined by attacks on the judiciary and attempts to politicize law enforcement. This erosion of norms is not merely a matter of political gamesmanship or partisan bickering. It represents a fundamental threat to the integrity of our democracy, creating an environment where the guardrails that have long protected us from tyranny begin to weaken. When those in positions of power feel emboldened to flout the rules, to disregard precedent, and to silence dissent, it creates a dangerous precedent that can be exploited by those with even more authoritarian ambitions. The consequences of this erosion are already being felt. Public trust in government has plummeted to historic lows, cynicism and apathy have taken root, and the very notion of civil discourse has become increasingly elusive. As the fabric of our democracy frays, it becomes easier for those who seek to divide us, to exploit our fears, and to undermine our faith in self-governance.
The cult of personality charisma masking authoritarianism. One of the most potent weapons in an aspiring autocrat's arsenal is charisma, the ability to captivate and enthrall audiences, to inspire fervent loyalty and blind devotion. History is replete with charismatic leaders who rose to power by appealing to the hopes, fears, and prejudices of the masses, often masking their true intentions behind a veneer of charm, patriotism, and promises of a brighter future. In the age of mass media and social media, the cult of personality has taken on a new and even more insidious form. Leaders can now bypass traditional gatekeepers and communicate directly with their followers, crafting carefully curated personas that bear little resemblance to reality. Through rallies, tweets, and carefully staged events, they can project an image of strength, decisiveness, and unwavering conviction, even as they chip away at the foundations of democracy. This direct connection between leader and follower can be intoxicating, creating a sense of intimacy and shared purpose that transcends traditional political allegiances. Followers, caught up in the fervor of the moment, may become willing to overlook or excuse behavior that would have once been deemed unacceptable, convincing themselves that the ends justify the means. The danger of the cult of personality lies in its ability to erode critical thinking and independent judgment. When individuals become overly reliant on a single source of information, when they view their chosen leader as infallible, they become susceptible to manipulation and propaganda. Dissent is silenced, opposing viewpoints are dismissed as illegitimate, and the very notion of objective truth is called into question.
The information war truth under siege. In the digital age, information has become both a powerful tool for empowerment and a dangerous weapon for manipulation. The rise of social media, while offering unprecedented opportunities for connection and communication, has also created fertile ground for the spread of misinformation, propaganda, and conspiracy theories. Authoritarian regimes, both past and present, have long understood the power of controlling the narrative, of shaping public perception through censorship, propaganda, and the suppression of dissenting voices. In the digital realm, however, these tactics have taken on a new level of sophistication and reach, allowing for the dissemination of falsehoods and distortions at an unprecedented scale and speed. Social media algorithms, designed to maximize engagement and keep users glued to their screens, often prioritize sensationalized content and emotionally charged narratives over factual accuracy and nuanced analysis. This creates a breeding ground for echo chambers, where individuals are exposed only to information that confirms their existing biases, reinforcing their beliefs and deepening societal divisions. The consequences of this information war are profound. As trust in traditional media institutions erodes and the line between fact and fiction becomes increasingly blurred, it becomes more difficult for citizens to make informed decisions about their lives, their communities, and their government. This creates an environment of uncertainty and mistrust, where conspiracy theories flourish and where the very notion of objective truth is called into question.
A house divided polarization as a tool of control. A divided nation is a weakened nation. This timeless truth has been exploited by aspiring autocrats throughout history who understand that a society riven by internal strife is more susceptible to their manipulative tactics. By sowing discord, stoking resentment, and exploiting existing social and political fault lines, they can weaken the bonds of unity and create an environment where fear and suspicion reign supreme. In America today, political polarization has reached a fever pitch, fueled by a toxic cocktail of hyper-partisanship, identity politics, and the relentless 24/7 news cycle. We have become increasingly divided along ideological lines, retreating into our respective echo chambers where we are bombarded with information that confirms our existing biases and demonizes those who hold opposing views. This polarization serves the interests of those who seek to undermine our democracy. By keeping us at each other's throats, by convincing us that our fellow citizens are the enemy, they distract us from the real threats to our freedom and prosperity. They erode our capacity for empathy, understanding, and compromise, making it increasingly difficult to find common ground and address the pressing challenges facing our nation. A house divided against itself cannot stand. If we are to safeguard our democracy, we must find a way to bridge the divides that separate us, to engage in respectful dialogue, and to rediscover the common good that binds us together as Americans. We must recognize that our shared values, freedom, equality, and justice for all, are far more powerful than the forces that seek to tear us apart.
The power of the presidency, a double-edged sword. The American presidency is a paradox, a position imbued with immense power, yet constantly subject to the shifting tides of public opinion, political maneuvering, and historical circumstance. It is a role that can elevate a nation, guiding it through times of crisis and uncertainty, or it can sow the seeds of division, eroding the very foundations of democracy in pursuit of personal ambition or ideological fervor. The Constitution, that enduring document that underpins American governance, grants the president significant authority to command the armed forces, to negotiate treaties, to appoint judges, to veto legislation. However, these powers are not absolute. They are carefully balanced by a system of checks and balances designed to prevent any one branch of government from accumulating too much power. The president's objective, therefore, is not merely to wield power, but to do so effectively within the constraints of this system, navigating the complexities of Congress, the judiciary, and public opinion to advance the interests of the nation. It is a delicate balancing act, requiring both political acumen and a deep understanding of the principles that underpin American democracy. Throughout history, American presidents have approached this challenge with varying degrees of success, their actions shaped by their personalities, their political beliefs, and the unique circumstances of their times. Some have risen to the occasion, demonstrating remarkable leadership and leaving an enduring legacy of progress and prosperity. Others, however, have succumbed to the temptations of power, their actions leaving lasting scars on the fabric of American democracy.
Shifting sands, the evolving agenda of the Oval Office. The objectives of an American president are rarely static. They evolve over time, shaped by events both domestic and international, by the ebb and flow of public sentiment, and by the ever-shifting dynamics of the political landscape. What might have been a top priority at the start of a presidency can quickly become overshadowed by unforeseen crises, economic downturns, or the emergence of new threats to national security. Consider the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a leader who assumed office during the depths of the Great Depression. Initially focused on economic recovery, Roosevelt's agenda expanded dramatically with the outbreak of World War II, forcing him to navigate the treacherous waters of global conflict while simultaneously addressing pressing domestic concerns. Similarly, the presidency of Lyndon B. Johnson, initially focused on carrying forward John F. Kennedy's legacy, became consumed by the escalating conflict in Vietnam and the burgeoning civil rights movement. Johnson's ambitious domestic agenda, which included landmark legislation on civil rights and social welfare, was ultimately overshadowed by the divisive and ultimately futile war in Southeast Asia. These examples underscore the dynamic nature of the presidency, the constant need for adaptation and reassessment as circumstances dictate. A president's ability to navigate these shifting sands, to balance competing priorities while remaining true to the core principles of American democracy, is a testament to their leadership and their commitment to the oath they swore to uphold.
Testing the boundaries. Executive overreach and the erosion of checks and balances. The temptation to overreach, to test the limits of presidential power, is ever present in the Oval Office. The very nature of the presidency, with its concentration of authority and its visibility on the world stage, can foster a sense of exceptionalism, a belief that the rules that bind others do not apply in the same way to the occupant of the White House. History is replete with examples of presidents who succumbed to this temptation, their actions ranging from questionable interpretations of executive authority to outright abuses of power. Richard Nixon's involvement in the Watergate scandal, a blatant attempt to use the instruments of government for personal and political gain, stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked executive power. More recently, the presidency of Donald Trump has raised renewed concerns about executive overreach and the erosion of democratic norms. From his repeated attacks on the free press to his efforts to obstruct justice and undermine the peaceful transfer of power, Trump's actions have tested the boundaries of presidential authority and challenged the very foundations of American democracy. These examples highlight the crucial role of checks and balances in a functioning democracy. A vigilant Congress, an independent judiciary, and a free and vibrant press serve as essential safeguards against executive overreach, holding presidents accountable for their actions and ensuring that they operate within the bounds of the law and the Constitution.
The shadow of ambition. When personal gain trumps national interest. Ambition in and of itself is not inherently detrimental. It can be a powerful driver of progress, motivating individuals to strive for excellence and to make a lasting impact on the world. However, when personal ambition becomes the driving force behind presidential decision-making, when it trumps the national interest and the well-being of the citizenry, it can have devastating consequences for a democracy. History provides cautionary tales of leaders who allowed their quest for power, their thirst for legacy, to cloud their judgment and lead them down a path of destruction. From Julius Caesar's consolidation of power in ancient Rome to Napoleon Bonaparte's rise and fall in France, the annals of history are filled with examples of leaders who prioritized their own ambitions over the needs of their people. In the context of the American presidency, the dangers of unchecked ambition are particularly acute. The vast power vested in the office, coupled with the constant scrutiny of the media and the relentless pressure of the 24/7 news cycle, can create an environment where even the most well-intentioned leaders can succumb to the allure of personal gain and the pursuit of legacy at all costs. Safeguarding against this requires constant vigilance on the part of both the citizenry and the institutions tasked with holding the president accountable. A free and independent press, a robust system of checks and balances, and an engaged and informed electorate are essential to ensuring that the presidency remains a force for good, its occupants' ambitions aligned with the best interests of the nation and its people.
A legacy at stake. The president's place in history and the future of democracy. Every president, regardless of their accomplishments or failures, leaves an indelible mark on the nation they lead. Their decisions, their actions, and even their words resonate through history, shaping the course of events for generations to come. The legacy they leave behind, the judgment of history, is a powerful motivator, influencing their choices and shaping their priorities as they navigate the complexities of the Oval Office. Some presidents are driven by a desire to be remembered as great leaders, as transformative figures who ushered in eras of peace, prosperity, or social progress. Others are content to be caretakers, guiding the nation through turbulent times with a steady hand and a commitment to preserving the status quo. The challenge for any president, as they contemplate their place in history, is to balance their own ambitions with the long-term interests of the nation. Do they prioritize short-term gains, seeking to solidify their legacy through popular policies and immediate results, even if those actions come at the expense of long-term stability or undermine democratic principles? Or do they adopt a more measured approach, recognizing that true greatness lies in strengthening the institutions of democracy and preserving the freedoms that have made America an enduring beacon of hope for so many? The answers to these questions, played out in the decisions and actions of each successive president, will ultimately determine the fate of American democracy. The legacy they leave behind will be etched not only in marble monuments and history books, but in the very fabric of American society, shaping the nation's character and its place in the world for decades to come.
The essence of freedom, self-governance, and the consent of the governed. At its core, democracy is about freedom, the freedom of individuals to shape their own destinies, to have a voice in how they are governed, and to hold their leaders accountable for their actions. It is a system built on the radical notion that power ultimately resides not in a king, a dictator, or an elite few, but in the hands of the people themselves. This principle, known as popular sovereignty, is enshrined in the very first words of the United States Constitution, "We, the people." These three simple words represent a profound departure from the monarchies and empires that dominated the world for centuries, establishing a government founded on the consent of the governed, where leaders derive their legitimacy not through birthright or divine right, but from the will of the people they represent. Democracy, in its purest form, is a conversation, an ongoing dialogue between the governed and those who govern. It is a messy, imperfect process, often characterized by disagreement, debate, and compromise. But it is through this messy process that the will of the people is ultimately expressed, ensuring that the government remains responsive to the needs and aspirations of its citizens. In a democracy, citizens are not subjects expected to blindly obey the dictates of their rulers. They are active participants in the political process, empowered to express their views, to challenge the status quo, and to demand better from their leaders. This active engagement, this willingness to hold power to account, is the lifeblood of a healthy democracy, ensuring that it remains vibrant, responsive, and truly representative of the people it serves.
Guardians of liberty, protecting individual rights and ensuring equal opportunity. Democracy is more than just a system of governance. It is a set of values, a commitment to the inherent dignity and worth of every individual. It recognizes that true freedom requires more than simply the absence of oppression. It demands the active protection of individual rights and the creation of a society where all citizens have an equal opportunity to thrive. Central to this vision is the rule of law, the principle that no one, not even the most powerful, is above the law. In a democracy, laws are not arbitrary dictates imposed by those in power. They are the product of a deliberative process, subject to public scrutiny and debate, and designed to protect the rights of all citizens equally. This commitment to individual rights extends beyond the legal realm. encompassing the fundamental freedoms that are essential to a just and equitable society. Freedom of speech and expression, freedom of assembly and association, freedom of religion and belief. These rights are not privileges granted by the state, they are inherent to our humanity, and their protection is paramount in a democratic society. Moreover, democracy recognizes that true equality requires not only equal protection under the law, but also equal opportunity to succeed. This means investing in education, healthcare, and economic opportunity for all citizens, creating a level playing field where individuals can reach their full potential, regardless of their background, beliefs, or circumstances.
The power of the people holding leaders accountable and shaping a nation's destiny. One of the most profound aspects of democracy is the power it vests in ordinary citizens. Unlike authoritarian regimes where dissent is silenced and power is concentrated in the hands of a select few, democracies thrive on the active participation of their citizenry. Through the power of the vote, citizens have the ability to choose their leaders, to shape the direction of their government, and to hold those in power accountable for their actions. Free and fair elections, conducted with transparency and integrity, are the cornerstone of any democratic system, ensuring that the government remains responsive to the will of the people. But the power of the people extends far beyond the ballot box. In a vibrant democracy, citizens engage in a multitude of ways to shape their nation's destiny. They organize, they protest, they advocate for policies they believe in, and they hold their leaders accountable through public scrutiny and debate. This active citizenry, this willingness to engage in the messy and often challenging work of self-governance, is what breathes life into democratic ideals. It is through the collective efforts of engaged citizens that democracies progress, adapt, and evolve, ensuring that they remain responsive to the needs and aspirations of the people they serve.
A beacon of hope, inspiring the world and advancing global progress. The significance of democracy extends far beyond the borders of any one nation. It stands as a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of human aspiration for freedom, self-determination, and a world where all individuals are treated with dignity and respect. Throughout history, the struggle for democracy has inspired countless individuals and movements, from the American Revolution to the fall of the Berlin Wall, from the Arab Spring to the ongoing fight for freedom and human rights in countries around the globe. Democracies, by their very nature, are more likely to promote peace, stability, and prosperity, both domestically and internationally. They are less likely to engage in wars of aggression, more likely to respect international law, and more likely to foster economic growth and development. Furthermore, democracies provide a framework for addressing global challenges that transcend national boundaries, from climate change and pandemics to poverty and inequality. By working together, by embracing the principles of cooperation and shared responsibility, democratic nations can build a more just, equitable, and sustainable future for all.
Guardians of our future, the responsibility of an informed and engaged citizenry. The fate of American democracy rests not solely in the hands of presidents, politicians, or powerful institutions, but in the hearts and minds of everyday citizens. We, the people, are the ultimate guardians of our own freedom, and the responsibility to protect and preserve our democracy falls squarely upon our shoulders. This is not a burden to be shirked or a duty to be taken lightly. It is a privilege hard-won by generations past, and a sacred trust we hold for generations yet to come. Our first line of defense against the erosion of democracy is an informed and engaged citizenry. In an age of information overload and rampant misinformation, it is more crucial than ever to be discerning consumers of news and information. We must be willing to look beyond our own echo chambers, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to engage in respectful dialogue with those who hold different views. Critical thinking is our most potent weapon against the insidious creep of propaganda and misinformation. We must question everything, demand evidence, and be wary of those who peddle fear, division, and simplistic solutions to complex problems. Education, both formal and informal, is paramount in equipping citizens with the tools they need to navigate the complexities of the digital age and to make informed decisions about their governance. Apathy and complacency are the enemies of a healthy democracy. When citizens disengage from the political process, when they become disillusioned or apathetic, it creates a vacuum that can be easily exploited by those who seek to undermine democratic norms and institutions. We must resist the temptation to tune out, to throw up our hands in despair, and instead embrace our role as active participants in shaping our nation's destiny.
Strengthening the pillars, reinforcing the institutions that safeguard our freedoms. While individual action is essential, protecting democracy also requires strengthening the institutions that serve as its pillars, the mechanisms that hold power in check and ensure that the government remains accountable to the people it serves. These institutions, often taken for granted, are the very foundation upon which our freedoms rest, and their integrity is paramount to the survival of our democracy. A free and independent press, once hailed as the Fourth Estate, plays a vital role in holding power to account, shining a light on corruption and informing the public on matters of national importance. We must support investigative journalism, protect journalists from intimidation and violence, and be wary of attempts to silence dissenting voices or to erode public trust in legitimate news sources. An independent judiciary, free from political interference, is essential to upholding the rule of law and ensuring that justice is administered fairly and impartially. We must resist efforts to politicize the courts, to pack them with ideologues, or to undermine the independence of judges. The judiciary serves as a bulwark against tyranny, and its integrity is paramount to a functioning democracy. A robust system of checks and balances, enshrined in the Constitution, is designed to prevent any one branch of government from accumulating too much power. We must demand that our elected officials respect these checks and balances, that they work across the aisle to find common ground, and that they prioritize the national interest over partisan gain. When one branch of government overreaches, it is the duty of the others to push back, to restore balance, and to protect the integrity of our democracy.
A call to action, embracing our civic duty and shaping a more democratic future. Protecting American democracy is not a spectator sport, it is a call to action, a summons to embrace our civic duty and to fight for the ideals we hold dear. It requires courage, vigilance, and an unwavering commitment to the principles of freedom, equality, and justice for all. The challenges we face are real, the threats are significant, but the spirit of democracy, that enduring flame that burns bright in the hearts of the American people, is stronger still. We must start by rejecting the politics of division and fear. Our strength lies not in our differences, but in our shared values, in our common humanity, and in our unwavering belief in the promise of America. We must engage in respectful dialogue, seek common ground, and build bridges of understanding across the divides that separate us. We must hold our leaders accountable, demanding transparency, integrity, and a commitment to the common good. We must vote in every election, local, state, and national, recognizing that our democracy functions best when all citizens participate. We must stay informed, engage in our communities, and make our voices heard on the issues that matter most. The future of American democracy is not preordained. It is ours to shape, to mold, to pass on to future generations. It is a legacy we inherit not as a guarantee but as a responsibility, a sacred trust to safeguard the freedoms we cherish and to continue the unfinished work of building a more perfect union. Let us rise to the challenge, embrace our civic duty, and ensure that the flame of American democracy continues to burn bright for generations to come.
The verdict, a nation at a crossroads. So is American democracy on the brink? Is the great experiment of self-governance, a beacon of hope for centuries, teetering on the precipice of collapse? The answer, as with most things in life, is far more nuanced than a simple yes or no. America stands at a crossroads, a pivotal juncture where the path ahead remains uncertain, shrouded in a fog of political maneuvering, social unrest, and a profound sense of unease about the future. We have journeyed through the annals of history, examining the rise and fall of empires, the seductive allure of authoritarianism, and the fragility of freedom in a world often hostile to its ideals. We have witnessed the erosion of democratic norms, the insidious creep of misinformation, and the corrosive effects of hyperpartisanship on the fabric of American society. The warning signs are undeniable, the parallels to darker chapters in human history impossible to ignore. But amidst the uncertainty, amidst the very real threats to the foundations of our republic, there remains a flicker of hope, a resilient spirit that has weathered storms before and emerged stronger for it. America has faced daunting challenges before: civil war, economic depression, global conflict, and each time, it has found a way to rise to the occasion, to summon the better angels of its nature, and to reaffirm its commitment to the enduring principles of liberty, equality, and justice for all.
The stakes. A world watching. The stakes in this struggle extend far beyond America's borders. The world is watching, observing with a mixture of hope and trepidation, as the United States grapples with its internal divisions and the very real threats to its democratic institutions. For decades, America has served as a beacon of democracy, a shining city on a hill, inspiring countless individuals and movements around the globe, striving for freedom, self-determination, and a more just world. The erosion of democracy in America, should it continue unchecked, would have profound implications for the global order. It would embolden autocrats and dictators, who would undoubtedly seize upon America's struggles as proof that democracy is a failed experiment, a relic of a bygone era. It would weaken alliances with democratic partners, who would rightly question America's commitment to shared values and its ability to lead on the world stage. Moreover, it would diminish America's moral authority, its ability to champion human rights, promote democratic reforms, and stand up to tyranny and oppression around the world. The world needs a strong and vibrant America, a nation committed to its founding ideals and willing to lead by example. The choices America makes in the coming years will have far-reaching consequences, not only for its own citizens, but for people around the globe who look to the United States as a beacon of hope, a symbol of what is possible when people are free to govern themselves.
A call to arms, defending the dream. This is not a time for despair, it is a time for action. The future of American democracy rests not on the shoulders of any one individual, but on the collective will of its citizens, on our willingness to embrace our civic duty and to fight for the ideals that have made this nation a beacon of hope for so many. We must start by rejecting the politics of division and fear-mongering, the cynical calculus that seeks to pit us against one another for political gain. Our strength lies not in our differences, but in our shared values, in our common humanity, and in our unwavering belief in the promise of America, a nation where all, regardless of background, belief, or circumstance, have the opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. We must engage in respectful dialogue, seeking common ground and building bridges across the divides that separate us. We must hold our leaders accountable, demanding transparency, integrity, and a commitment to the common good. We must educate ourselves and others, becoming discerning consumers of information and standing up against the insidious creep of misinformation and propaganda. The future of American democracy is not preordained. It is a choice we make every single day through our actions, our words, and our unwavering commitment to the ideals that have guided this nation since its inception. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose to defend the dream, to safeguard our inheritance, and to ensure that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth.